Hi, this is Scott Seaton, Music Director of the North State Symphony, and this is a very special edition of Musician Accents, a series where we interview members of the symphony and you get to know more about their background, how they started out in music, and how they ended up at this point. And with me today is our very young concertmaster, Terrie Baune. Terrie, how are you doing?
I'm good.
You know, it's been a long time since we've actually been together in an orchestral setting, but
yes, it has.
How have these past several months treated you? How have you been keeping busy? How has your life adapted since we played Saint-Saëns Organ Symphony back in February?
Yeah. Well, really, the biggest change for me has been not traveling regularly as I used to do. Mm. I've been sheltering in place in Arcata, and just. See, I've always had this excuse for like when things get dirty. It's like, well, I'm gonna go to my other house next week anyway. So actually staying in one house, staying in one place is a new thing for me. But I'm very grateful to be in the place that I am because my piano trio is there. Right. And I play trios with Carol and with John Chernoff, and so for a couple of months we couldn't play at all. Right. But then we found pianos, and so I have been able, thankfully, to do some playing. Right. But of course the symphonic work is all not happening. So I really miss playing in the orchestra. I'm really looking forward to when we will be able to do that again.
Me too.
I'm sure you are. Yeah.
And so let's backtrack. There's a long story behind you. Let's go as close to the beginning as we can. So where did you grow up and how did you get into music? Who introduced you to music and how did you pick the violin? So those three.
Okay. I grew up in Mill Valley, California, which is a suburb of San Francisco. Mm-hmm. I probably was introduced to the idea of music by my mother, mm-hmm. who liked music very much. And she played a little piano and she sang a little bit. And she had terrible rhythm. So she just never really performed or anything like that, but she loved music. And she had San Francisco Symphony season tickets.
Really?
Yeah, she went to the symphony regularly. But actually, as far as getting into music, when I was 5, because I was the younger of 2 children, so when I started going to school, then my mom got a job at the school that I went to in the Instructional Materials Center, which was the library, basically. Mm. I mean, she was involved in purchasing books in the library. And her boss was a very avid amateur pianist, and I still don't know why, but her boss offered to give me piano lessons. Oh. And so, like, what are you going to do when your boss offers to give your kid piano lessons? You're going to say yes, right? So when I was 5, I started taking piano lessons with Laurel, who gave me a really good grounding in music. She was extremely conservative in her taste. She thought that basically classical music ended at about 1875. But I got a very good grounding in classical harmony. So when I was about 6 or 7, my mom started taking me once in a while to the symphony with her. And I just really fell in love with the sound of the violin section. So I wanted to play the violin from the time that I heard the orchestra. But I always wanted to play, I was basically just like looking down from the balcony circle and just going, wow, I want to be in the middle of that. It was that sonority that really attracted me. It wasn't like the violin per se. So I was lucky enough to go to a school that offered, that had a string program. They came around at the beginning of 4th grade and said, who wants to play the violin? And I raised my hand. But I almost didn't become a violinist because I really didn't like the teacher.
Oh.
Yeah. He acted like a drill sergeant. It was very, he really did. And so after about 3 months of this, I was thinking, okay, I guess I was wrong. I guess I don't really like the violin at all. And then, so this is Vietnam era.
Mm-hmm.
And it turned out he actually was a drill sergeant. He got called up and got sent to Vietnam. The replacement teacher came in who was straight out, had just graduated from, just gotten his degree in music education, played the trumpet, was one step ahead of us in the Muller-Rush book,
Oh, really?
but was a great guy and a really good teacher. Yeah. And at that point I realized, oh, it's not that I don't like the violin, it's that I didn't like that teacher. So, I mean, and I like to tell that story because the whole concept of how important early education is, and especially in the arts, is very personally important to me because of my experience, right? So, shout out to all you good teachers out there. Thank you. So I played the violin from that point on. First I just played in school, and then about a year later I got a little scholarship and started taking private lessons. Oh. There were a couple of San Francisco Symphony members who lived in Mill Valley, and so.
And you had played piano how long before you picked up violin?
3 years.
3 years. Okay.
Yeah.
So your musician base was already pretty strong at that point.
Yeah, I wasn't a brilliant pianist. I never really figured out how to use the pedals. But yeah, I did. I pretty much was studying music from the age of 5. As soon as I started the violin, I dropped the piano.
So you haven't played piano since then?
No. I did the obligatory piano class in music school, and other than that, yeah.
Okay, so you're now playing violin. So where did you get your training? What's that whole path, and how did that lead to your first professional gig?
So I went to Oberlin Conservatory for my training, and at that time, so I was there in the mid-70s, and it was kind of in the middle of, there were a lot of experiments in education going on at that time. So I hit this great little window where, in order to graduate, all I needed to do was amass the right number of credits, but they didn't have to be in any particular kinds of classes. There were no distribution requirements, which I think literally there was like a 5-year period when they tried that, and then they decided, that's not a good idea. But so, I like to joke that I went to trade school because really, I just was, when I figured that out, I was like, okay, so I can do like 6 chamber music groups and be in both orchestras and take the maximum number of lessons, and I barely have to take classes at all. I can just practice. So I really did I did a lot of playing, a lot of work in music school. I always had, you probably have noticed, I've always had authority issues. I don't like doing things just because somebody tells me to do them. I want to know why it's a good idea. So I really didn't think I could make it through more than a bachelor's degree. And I was hoping that I could find a job. And actually the summer that I graduated, I took a lot of auditions and won the job in the National Symphony in Washington, D.C. So I essentially went there straight out of just after getting my bachelor's degree.
That's a very difficult thing to do. So.
Well, yeah, it is in many ways.
From school to the National Symphony in less than a year, that's a very impressive accomplishment.
Yeah, it's impressive. It's actually slightly less impressive if you know that they were expanding the orchestra at that point. So they were adding a stand of strings to each section. So they were actually, and at the time, the relatively new music director, I came in his second year, was Mstislav Rostropovich. who was pretty picky. And so what happened was it was like July, and they still had 5 violin openings to fill because he had had previous auditions and he hadn't hired anybody.
Right.
So, I mean, the personnel manager actually told me later, was like, ordinarily we wouldn't even have invited you to that audition without having any prior orchestra experience, but we were so desperate to hire people that we just let anybody come who sent us a resume.
Wow.
And so, yeah, I mean, really it was lucky for me that I even got to audition for that job.
Well, it turned out
It turned out well.
Which is great.
Yeah, it turned out well. I'm very grateful for my National Symphony experience. I spent 4 years there.
4 years, okay.
4
So
years.
what happened after the National Symphony?
While I was there, I realized that I really need more variety in my life than playing the same repertoire with the same people.
Were you playing a lot of chamber music at that time?
I wasn't.
Okay.
I wasn't, because I'm not a high energy kind of person. And so that job was
very demanding.
I tried to play chamber music in my spare time, but it wasn't something that I felt like I had the energy for. And at that level, most of the big orchestras, they're pretty conservative in terms of repertoire.
Yeah.
So in 4 years, there were pieces that I had played 60 or 70 times, and that I could look forward to playing another, several hundred times in a career like that. And there were other pieces that I knew I would never be able to play because they're not marketable. And so I ended up feeling that this was just not the right situation for me. I met my husband in National Symphony also.
Oh, okay.
He had been there for about 15 years when I got there, but we both grew up in Marin County.
Oh, interesting.
So whereas we met in Washington, so what we ended up coming back to California. Then we quit our jobs. We came back to California. We started to freelance.
Oh.
And since that time, I've essentially been a freelance musician. I did spend 2 years in the Auckland Philharmonia in New Zealand.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that was 1988 through 90.
Wow.
We lived in Washington, down the street from the New Zealand consulate. Embassy, sorry, it's Washington, it's an embassy. And also my mother worked for a while at San Francisco Opera, and her boss was from New Zealand. And so we'd heard a lot about New Zealand, and what a beautiful place it was. And we got a little bit at loose ends, we were like, I don't know. So we actually,
why not?
Yeah, we were able to audition for jobs there by tape at the time. So we went and played in the orchestra in Auckland, which is not the biggest orchestra in New Zealand, but Auckland is the biggest city,
right.
But the biggest orchestra is in Wellington. But so that was actually very fun because it was the kind of orchestra that does like 10 symphony concerts and a musical for a month and a little ballet and a little opera and this and that. So
you did everything.
Yeah, so we did a little of everything down there.
So why did you leave Auckland?
So a couple of things happened in quick succession. My old boss at the Women's Philharmonic called and said, we just thought we'd get in touch because the person that we hired to replace you as concertmaster is leaving. So we were just curious if you happen to be thinking about coming back. Your old job would be there. And the day after that, a really good friend of mine who's a conductor that I had always loved working with called me and said, I just thought I'd check in with you. I was just curious to see what was up because I'm starting a new orchestra and looking for a concertmaster, and if there was any chance you were going to be around, we could work together again. And so it just seemed like the stars were kind of telling us to go back to America. So, in fact, we did.
So you came back, and when did you join the Oakland Symphony?
I joined the Oakland Symphony in, I believe, 1991.
So you've been there a while.
Yeah, as associate concertmaster.
Almost as long as Michael, right?
Yeah, I think it was either his second or third. I think it was his second year that I joined.
Okay.
Yeah, might have been his third year. I went to school with Michael.
Right.
So I had known him.
Talking about Michael Morgan.
Michael Morgan, right.
My mentor and one of her bosses as well.
Yeah. And yeah, I was doing a Defia Master Peter's puppet show with a group that was run by another schoolmate of ours, actually. Yeah. And Michael came to that performance, and that's how he realized that I was back in town.
Oh, okay.
And the associate concertmaster in Oakland was actually a conductor appointed position. So he asked me if I wanted to come do that, and I said sure. So I've been with Oakland ever since, and became co-concertmaster, I don't know, 8 or 9 years ago. Yeah.
So let's get to North State Symphony.
Yeah.
So when did you join the North State Symphony?
I joined the North State Symphony in 2001.
So the official first year of the North State Symphony is when you came.
I believe it was, yeah. I didn't play every concert that year.
But you were never with the Chico Symphony, you were just...
I played concertmaster with the Chico Symphony once when they did a show with the Sons of the San Joaquin.
Okay.
But yeah, no, I was not a member of the Chico Symphony ever.
Okay.
I was recommended to Kyle and Susie when the new orchestra was being formed, and I played the first. I think I only played the first set that first year, and then I was able to play a couple of sets the year after, and then. But I immediately I wanted to sign on. I mean, after I played that first set, I liked working with Kyle very much. I liked the orchestra a lot. It just took a little while to work out scheduling so that I could make it a priority.
What were those main factors for you? Was there something about the region, the area specifically, that you liked in contrast to what I'm sure was already a busy Bay Area life?
Yeah, the area was definitely part of it. I did enjoy coming up here. But I would say the main thing for me, the main things were, I've arranged my life spent a lot of time working on not having to work for anybody that I don't really like and respect. So that's an important thing for me. And I also really liked the makeup of the orchestra. I mean, I mentioned my kind of hankering for diversity a little earlier in our discussion, and this orchestra being made up of a variety of people, from some people who are full-time professional players like myself, and then there are people who have day jobs who do it for the love of it, and there's music teachers, and I just felt like the vibe of this orchestra was and is really good in that way, that it's a group of people that all want to be here and all want to play together.
Absolutely.
And that's really important to me. So, I mean, I feel like for example, I'm in a situation in Oakland, it's, if you just look at the technical aspects of what's going on, it's a better orchestra in the sense that you have more professional players who, the aggregate is maybe, has more technical accomplishment, but I feel that we are able to rise to the occasion in a way that is very rare in the professional world. When you have an entire group of people who is really focusing on their love for the art, like we have, you're able to transcend your own weaknesses and do amazing things.
Absolutely. In the past 6 years now that I've been here, well, I remember the first day that I walked in and we worked on Dvorak's Seventh Symphony. Like these are.
I remember that too.
Yeah, it was because it was, one, it's my favorite symphony, and two, the energy that I absorbed walking into the room and the smiling faces that I saw. It was just, it's always been such a welcoming environment. And there are many orchestras that I've conducted in the past 3 or 4 years that I remember distinctly being the polar opposite of that, where you walk into a room and you're drained instantly because the morale is so low. And I'm incredibly thankful to be able to work with people like you and the other amazing musicians who give me something to look forward to. And that's why these past few months have been so hard for me, is because I really can't wait to get back to the concert hall and do what I love doing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I feel exactly that same way about working with you personally, which I'm really looking forward to doing. But also just getting back with the orchestra is going to be wonderful when we're able to do it. Yeah.
Do you have any specific pieces or concerts with the North State Symphony that stand out that for one reason or another?
Well, in one way, the very first concert that I played stood out. I don't even remember actually exactly what we played, but it was right after 9/11.
Right.
We almost canceled. I remember discussing, should we actually put this concert on, and then we decided that we should, because people needed to come together in that way. So that was a very strongly emotional experience for that reason. I think as far as musically, some of the Mahler that we've done, that's kind of that was the one thing that I missed about the big orchestra, the big major orchestra, because the smaller orchestras, you don't get to do a lot of Mahler symphonies.
Not very often.
Not very often, yeah.
It's an event when we get to do Mahler.
Yeah. So, and doing Mahler 4 with Kyle was, and that's a great concertmaster solo piece. It's so
you get to be the devil for a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. You get to be the devil for a whole moment. So what's not to like? But then I have to say, I mean, I'm not pandering, but really that I remember that Dvorak with you very well. Yeah, that was really exciting for us as an orchestra, but also for me personally, because I really felt, I joke a lot with people here that, like, North State Symphony, you guys have no idea how hard I usually am on conductors. Well, you can probably tell by now, but I mean, really, the number of conductors that I actually actively like working with, I don't need 2 hands to count that. I'm very, very tough on, I have very picky standards about conductors. And so when Kyle was leaving, I really just felt like, the odds that we're going to find somebody else that I actually want to work with are so low. It wasn't like I was assuming that I would hate the person, but I really honestly did not expect us to find someone that I would really want to hire, actively want to hire. And so, like, when you came in and when we did that Dvorak, I just was so happy that like the odds aren't gonna actually be broken, and like this is possible for lightning to strike twice, and for me to actually find 2 conductors with my favorite orchestra that I want to work with, and so really that was a great concert.
Oh, it was so much fun.
Very happy.
Oh, you've already mentioned several, but do you have any favorite composers, or is it more of a general response like myself, like, oh, I like whoever I'm studying at the moment, really? Although I can name some. So do you have any that, oh my God, this is my favorite composer?
Yeah, I kind of feel like you, that I do feel that what I'm working with at the time is often what I feel is my favorite thing to do. I really couldn't live without Mahler in my life. I couldn't live without Brahms in my life. I couldn't live without Beethoven in my life. I do tend to like that German aesthetic. I think. Yeah, I don't think I could live without any Ravel in my life. But yeah.
Good choices, obviously. I have one final question, I believe. So outside of music, what do you like to do? What are your hobbies? What interests do you have that are not Mahler and Ravel and Brahms and Beethoven? And new music, because we didn't talk a lot about that, but you are a huge advocate for, and that's why we get along very well, because any time that we can introduce people to something new and break this, well, this is classical music, but this is also classical music.
Yeah.
So we agree on that, and I like that I get to work with an orchestra that is enthusiastic about discovering who these next great composers are. Yeah. But anyway, that aside, what do you like to do?
I read constantly. Anything that you can do with the book in your hand is better. I do a lot of sewing also. I make some of my clothing, but I recently, one of my pandemic projects was making a wall hanging for my studio because it's a little wide in there. I wanted some, so I've done some quilting and some that kind of thing.
Things that I know nothing about. I mean, my mom sews, but quilting I think is another thing that I admire your patience.
I just like playing with fabric. I mean, also, buying fabric, that's a hobby in itself. Right? Every sewer, I think, has this giant fabric drawer full of stuff they intend to use.
Absolutely. Well, Terrie, it's been a real pleasure chatting and getting to know more about your background. I hope everyone out there learned something new today that they didn't know before about our wonderful concertmaster. And I truly hope that in the coming months we can actually make music where I'm actually contributing something.
Yes, I do too. And we will.
Yeah, we will.
Find a way.
But until that point, I hope everyone can catch one of our concerts coming up before this airs, which is our Christmas Eve Beethoven extravaganza, our Beethoven 250 celebration. So it's been so fun curating performances with you while we can't make music in a larger setting. And at the very least, you have one of your passions alive, which is chamber music. And so hope that you all get to experience that as well. And thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.